It was the summer of 2004, and Los Angeles was basking under a golden sun. For most people, it was just another season, but for 21-year-old engineering student Kevin Ramirez, it was a dream come true. He had just landed an internship at a scrappy, upstart rocket company few people outside Silicon Valley had ever heard of, SpaceX. Founded by the eccentric and ambitious tech billionaire Elon Musk just 2 years prior, the company had big dreams of sending rockets, and eventually humans, into space, faster, cheaper, and more reliably than ever before. At the time, though, SpaceX was still operating out of a modest facility in El Segundo, with no successful launches under its belt and everything to prove. Kevin had grown up in a working-class neighborhood in East Los Angeles. His parents were Mexican immigrants who worked tirelessly, his father as a mechanic and his mother as a janitor. They always emphasized education, and Kevin had listened. He was attending Cal Poly Pomona on a scholarship, majoring in mechanical engineering. Landing the internship at SpaceX felt like validation of every sleepless night he had spent poring over textbooks and tinkering with makeshift robotics projects in his garage. But soon after he arrived at SpaceX, the excitement began to clash with a cold, harsh reality: he couldn't afford to live in Los Angeles. The unpaid internship meant that, while he was gaining invaluable experience working on the Falcon 1 propulsion systems, he was also couch surfing, skipping meals, and secretly sleeping in his rusted 1997 Honda Civic parked just 2 blocks away from the SpaceX building. For weeks, Kevin kept his situation to himself. He showed up early every morning and stayed late every night, earning a reputation for being diligent and resourceful. He would shower in the SpaceX bathroom, change clothes in a stall, and heat up instant ramen in the break room microwave. He never complained. But one night, everything changed. It was nearly 11 de la noche when Elon Musk walked into the propulsion lab, unannounced as usual. Elon often made late-night visits to check on projects or brainstorm ideas with engineers. He noticed Kevin hunched over a computer, running simulations, visibly exhausted. "Still here?" Elon asked casually, sipping a Red Bull. Kevin jumped slightly. "Yes, sir. Just finishing up some testing on the injector model." Elon walked over, peering at the screen. "Good work. You're not even full-time, right? You're an intern?" "Yes." There was a brief silence. Elon studied Kevin for a moment, then asked a simple question that would open the floodgates. "Where do you live?" Caught off guard, Kevin hesitated. He could have lied. He could have said in Gilwood or with friends. But something about the question, the way it was asked, direct and disarming, made him speak the truth. "I'm technically homeless. I sleep in my car a few blocks away. Can't really afford rent here. But it's fine." Elon blinked. "You're living in your car? While working here?" Kevin nodded, embarrassed. "It's just temporary. This internship means everything to me. I don't want to blow it." What happened next was something Kevin never expected, and something that would eventually become part of SpaceX folklore. Elon said nothing for a few seconds. Then he looked Kevin in the eyes and said, "Come with me." The two of them walked through the silent halls of SpaceX and stepped into Elon's private office. It was cluttered with whiteboards, scribbles of orbits and booster stages, and half-empty coffee cups. Elon picked up his phone and made a call. "Sam, it's Elon. I need temporary corporate housing arranged, immediately, for one of our interns. Starting tonight. Also get him a per diem allowance. And bump his stipend. I don't care what we've done before, the son has earned it." Kevin stood there, stunned. "I can't accept that," he said. "I mean, I appreciate it, but..." Elon interrupted. "Look, you're literally helping build the first privately developed orbital rocket. You're doing real work. You shouldn't be living like that. We're going to Mars, but we can't even house our interns? That's unacceptable." And just like that, Kevin's life changed. Within 24 hours, he was moved into a small but fully furnished studio apartment in Hawthorne, a few miles from the SpaceX campus. He was given a company laptop, a stipend for food and transportation, and, perhaps most importantly, the confidence to know that his work was valued. Word of what had happened spread quietly around SpaceX. Elon didn't publicize it. In fact, he instructed HR not to make a big deal out of it. But among the engineers, the story of the intern who lived in his car and was rescued by the boss himself became a source of pride and a symbol of the company's underdog spirit. Kevin continued to intern that summer and was offered a full-time position after graduation. Over the next decade, he rose through the ranks at SpaceX, eventually becoming the director of propulsion systems for the Falcon Heavy project. He played a key role in the historic 2018 launch that saw a Tesla Roadster hurtling into space, and he now mentors young engineers, many of whom come from backgrounds just like his. But the story doesn't end there. Years later, during a fireside chat at a university, Elon Musk was asked about leadership and how to motivate young talent. He told a story, without naming names, about an intern who had shown extraordinary grit. "I met a guy who was sleeping in his car because he believed in our mission," Elon said. When you see that kind of commitment, it's your responsibility as a leader to help. People talk about changing the world. Well, it starts with changing Someone's day. That moment became a viral soundbite. Suddenly, people wanted to know more about the intern. Online sleuths uncovered Kevin's journey, and he was eventually invited to speak on podcasts, tech panels, and even TEDx. He used his platform to advocate for paid internships, housing support for low-income students in tech, and diversity in aerospace. And through it all, he always credited Elon for the pivotal decision that had changed his life. "It wasn't just about housing," Kevin said in an interview. "It was about being seen. Elon cold bay brushed me off. But he listened. And then he acted. That's leadership." Of course, not everyone praised Elon. Critics claimed it was a PR stunt or pointed out that if the company had simply offered paid internships from the start, none of this would have been necessary. But Kevin pushed back on that narrative. "It's easy to criticize from the outside," he said. But in those early days, SpaceX was fighting to survive. Every dollar was accounted for. I don't excuse unpaid internships, but I also understand the context. And what matters is that when Elon found out, he did something about it, immediately. Over the years, SpaceX restructured its intern program. Stipends were increased, relocation assistance became standard, and a housing support initiative was introduced for interns coming from low-income families. Internally, it was known as the KR policy, a quiet nod to Kevin Ramirez. Eventually, Elon and Kevin reconnected during the preparations for the first Starship launch. Elon, ever forward-looking, was focused on the future of Mars colonization. But when he saw Kevin walk into the launch control room, he paused for a moment. "You still working on injectors?" he asked with a grin. Kevin laughed. "Among other things." They shook hands. No grand speech, no dramatic moment. Used mutual respect. A small interaction that spoke volumes. Today, Kevin serves on the board of multiple aerospace startups. He's also the founder of a nonprofit that provides housing and mentoring to engineering interns in high-cost cities. His life is a living example of how a single act of empathy, from someone in power, can change not only one life but ripple outward to affect hundreds, even thousands more. And to this day, whenever he speaks to young students, Kevin shares one powerful lesson: never be ashamed of where you come from. And never assume the people at the top aren't watching. Because sometimes, the moment they notice, is the moment everything changes. As for Elon Musk, he rarely speaks about that nada en el segundo. But when asked about legacy, he once said something that seemed to touch on the story. "Rockets are cool. Mars is cool. But at the end of the day, what matters most is the people. You can't build the future without taking care of the ones building it."